Introduce myself. My name is Joshua Gonzalez. I am the Assistant Director of Debate at the University of Houston. How many Houston people I got here?
Woo!
All right. All right. Anyway, welcome for those of you who are just starting up this week now. For those of you who have been dealing with me for a week already, hello again. This is sort of the introductory, a week late admittedly, but we kind of did this on purpose, topic lecture. And I've given it the overcome title of the topic lecture that you have to sit through. I will make it as fun as possible, which is to say, not exceedingly fun, probably. But we'll do the best we can. So, there's two parts that I've broken this into. All right, and a lot of it's going to be sort of like brainstorming, kind of interactive stuff. But the two parts, pretty basically, the first one is discussing, first of all, what the resolution is and what the different parts of the resolution mean, and why those are meaningful to you. The second part of the lecture will be then discussing sort of app and neg ground, what sort of arguments you can expect to encounter over the course of the year, and what, more than that actually, like a lot of these lectures love to just sort of like rattle off things and then give you a bunch of background information about like the foundation of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration or whatever. So I'm not going to do any of that. There's lots of really cool Wikipedia pages if you want to do that. I'm more going to talk about what I think are good tips for preparing on the affirmative and negative on this topic, because I could never actually cover everything that's in it. That's a daunting research task that will be effectively crowdsourced by everyone around the country over the course of the year, but me, not so much. So, part one. Part one is the resolution. The resolution says what? It says, resolved, the United States federal government should substantially increase its non-military exploration and or development of the Earth's oceans. As it appears on the screen right now is the exact grammatically correct version of the topic. And you know, with all the punctuation and all the capitalization exactly how it should be, I got it because I copied it off of the website of the National Federation of High Schools Speech and Debate section, which is the people that issue the actual resolutional text. You can do the same. You probably don't need to copy it down right now and try and be perfect and stuff like that. I'm guessing you know the resolution. So, to me, by my read, I think that there are 6 meaningful parts to the topic. The resolution, actually, not to the topic. There's 6 meaningful semantic chunks of the resolution, sort of meaningful phrases. Some of them, interestingly enough, aren't even necessarily clustered together. Some of them you kind of have to pluck different words and put them together to figure out what the sort of functional pieces of it are. These are also, as you might imagine, I think, the sort of 6 bits of topicality that are going to matter. Without further ado, the first one I think that is meaningful is the one that's meaningful and the same in every topic, and that's resolved, the United States federal government should. Right? Resolved, the United States federal government should. Now, this is mostly meaningful in what type of debates. We have a word we use to describe them oftentimes. What are those?
Conversation.
Well, yeah, topic. Really? What else?
Traditional.
What do negs run against teams that don't defend an app? Every framework, right? These words are relevant to framework debates, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about these. Aside from to say that I think most people debate these horribly backwards, all right? Because they think that the whole bit of the resolution, all right, that generates the necessity for a plan, right, or calls for are these parts, right? The United States federal government. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Nothing in the words United States federal government whatsoever implies the notion that there ought to be a plan in a debate. Should. Should and resolve are the words that are relevant to those questions if you're debating T, but mostly should. resolution, what type of debate is a debate that has a word should in a resolution?
Debate of obligation.
It's a policy debate, right? We call it policy debate, that's because it uses the word should, right? Should implies an action, something you do, right? Ought can also, oftentimes, we don't use it though because it's a little bit more mushy, right? Versus is or ought sometimes, all right, is a different type of debate. It's the type they do oftentimes in Lincoln Douglas. That's a, what type of debate is that?
Value.
Fact value, fact/value type of debate. So if you're going to do framework stuff and all and have those debates and everything, and you all probably have one of those if you like to do case stuff or you don't like to do case stuff or whatever, you're going to have those. That's that. First hunk, I'm done on that. So, back we are to the good old-fashioned big old resolution, right? So, next piece I think that is meaningful is substantially increase. And again, I'm not going to talk about this too much. You've had this, those words appear pretty much in every resolution ever. I don't want to talk about it too much. Anybody have any questions about substantially increase? It means more and big, please. Good? All right. So, back to the old normal resolution. And I'm doing these in order, I think, of like uniqueness or not uniqueness for the sort of topic. As we go deeper and deeper, they get harder and more important for what the debates will be about this year. Hunk number 3, sort of meaningful phrase number 3 for the resolution is Earth's oceans. Earth's oceans. What is an ocean? Yes. I grew up in Michigan. Anybody from Michigan here? You're from Michigan? Oh, cool. Good. Good. Do we have large bodies of water in Michigan?
Yes.
Huh? Salt water? How many oceans are there?
4.
Two. There's 2. The one on the surface and the one below the crust.
Actually, there is evidence that just there, kind of thing like that, right? So that raises an interesting. We got a lot of different answers, right? Here's one thing that we can do to define the oceans, and this will come into play much later in the lecture when I start talking about some of the critique ideas. But one is that the oceans, in theory, are these contiguous body of water, contiguous meaning uninterrupted, all right, that cover some of the surface of the Earth. Yes?
Why do you think it made, like, Earth possessive?
Pardon?
Like, the apostrophe S on Earth makes it possessive of the oceans that it belongs to. What are your...
The reasoning's pretty simple. This goes very, very far back. Interestingly enough, to my novice Europe debate is the reason it was done. And it was the last time there was a major correction to the resolution in the middle of the year. It was a space exploration topic. All right? And we said we had to explore space. And then the summer camps all happened, and everyone was like, ha ha ha, I'm going to be super tricky. All right? I'm going to explore the space on the Earth from outer space. And I'm going to use satellites and stuff like that to study it. Right? Other people then, right? So then they had to add the phrase, beyond the Earth's mesosphere. And how many of you remember that phrase? Right? That was part of our last space topic, was it not?
Yeah.
Right? That got added in like was it like September or something like that? Because we came back and it was like, whoops! Yeah, we wrote a totally different topic than we thought. Well, not we, I didn't have 18, that was 15. So Earth's is so people don't explore like Europa and other parts of the solar system and or universe potentially. Dead serious.
Well, like, why couldn't they say oceans on the Earth?
Because there's is probably not a geographically or geologically accurate terminology to describe the way that the oceans work on the Earth. That is more of a description of the way that like static land masses work, and even those aren't static, they actually move and stuff like that. So in theory, I mean, I suppose it means that Earth owns the oceans or something like that. So if we have some like really good cards that like Earth sucks or development of the Earth's oceans. Oceans on the Earth, whatever. The oceans are this contiguous thing of water, right? But rivers, in theory, and a lot of the lakes, like the Great Lakes, are theoretically contiguous with the oceans as well. We certainly don't call those parts of the ocean. Which is to say that there is some degree of slipperiness in what the oceans mean. So, how is it that we distinguish between an ocean and a lake? It's not landlocked, I suppose. And somebody said salinity, is that right? Yeah, yeah. Sharks. Sharks is,
They're
I
freshwater
like sharks.
sharks.
I would like to go with sharks. Can't, but would like to. Salinity actually isn't very good either. How many of you have been to or are from Utah? Yeah, Great Salt Lake, saltier than the ocean. Dead Sea, not part of the ocean, landlocked, very salty. How many of you are from Southern California or have vacationed there? Right, how many of you have ever been to the, what is it, the Salton Sea? Right, the big lake south of LA, like over by like Palm Desert and Palm Springs. That's like an accident that happened when a dam broke in the 1920s. Yeah, it's a dead sea, right? All the fish are dead in it and everything. I went there on a vacation with my fiance and her parents once. This was like the first time I met her parents, and they were like, let's go to this awesome dead sea that smells completely of dead fish and has nothing living in or around it. What a great thing to visit and spend an afternoon with. And then we showed up and I was like, yep, you're right, it smells terrible and everything here is dead. Let's walk around it for 2 hours. That'd be great. It'd be super. So now you know that about me. Soon we'll learn something about you. Yeah, no, so it's not salinity. What I'm getting at here is actually the definition of what the oceans are is actually kind of human created in some ways, the distinction between the two. There are some better scientific discussions in terms of the type of flora and fauna that exist in them, the way that different circulation patterns work. There's a couple other things that I think are worth noting about them. One is that some people suggest that oceans have tides, whereas other things don't. That's not true. The Great Lakes have tides. They're not as significant as the ocean because they don't weigh as much, obviously. The oceans are ultimately political constructs. All right, so let's name them off, the ones that are traditionally built. What are they?
Pacific.
Okay, Atlantic, Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, the Southern Ocean.
The one below the crust?
Right. 5, some people break them into 6. Some people split them into 2. Because the Atlantic has 2 distinct thermohaline cycles. Here's the important part. Again, these are political boundaries for the most part. Right? We make up what they are largely. Now, that means that they are, for the most part, arbitrary. Okay? But when I say that they are arbitrary, that does not, however, mean that they are meaningless, though. Just because it's arbitrary doesn't mean that it has meaning. All of you, every single one of you, can look at a globe and point out oceans, all right, and point out not oceans. All right, you can still do it pretty well. The oceans themselves, however, are, interestingly enough, as a result of international law, and this will be meaningful for affirmatives on this topic, all right, and for negatives, divided into distinct zones. The first one that you need to know are the territorial waters of a particular nation. The territorial waters, does anyone know how far out they extend? How?
150.
Still haven't heard it yet.
Nautical mile.
I heard it.
Nautical mile.
12 nautical miles. Goes out 12 miles from the coastline. At And if you draw all of those arcs from every point, theoretically, along the coastline of a nation, that becomes its, right, like those are its territorial waters. That means that all of the laws of that nation apply in those waters. Those waters are exclusively the possession in theory, not possession necessarily, but that nation has exclusive jurisdiction over its territorial waters in all forms. Economic, legal, political, everything. Once you pass 12 waters, you are now, 12 waters. Once you pass 12 miles, you are now in international waters, technically. And while there are some other zones that extend out for the purposes of certain things, the ability of people to police, patrol, kind of things like that, the next meaningful one is the exclusive economic zone, the EEZ. The EEZ extends for another 100 miles plus. By definition, yes. But I want you to think about a map. All right? And if you're drawing a 200-mile arc, that's very easy to do in like Oregon. Right? But if you think about a place where countries are smaller, they do, but they also fight over it a lot. You may have heard these things like the South China Sea, the Spratly Islands, and things like that. There are plenty of places on the planet where who has control over those things is very disputed. In theory, it can extend statutorily up to 200 miles out. You have the exclusive ability, if you're a country, then all of the economic activity is yours in there. Nobody else can just sort of like drive on over and like drill for oil or something like that. All right, mostly the ocean floor is the important part of that because of the minerals that exist underneath it and on it. That's what you need to know about the Earth's oceans for now. And I need to get moving. So, oh wait, I got a little behind. Okay, back to the slide. Back to the resolution. So, if that was, what do you think I think the next most important hunk in the res is?
Non-military.
Name when someone's like reading screen through, it's the name sheet. That's like actually good guesses. Good guesses. All right, non-military.
It's only words that matter now.
Yeah, non-military.
It was a rhetorical question.
Right. In fact, it's not just non-military. It's non-military.
The ocean.
That was an autocorrect. That was not me.
Oh, okay, I was going to say.
Not my fault. I want to be clear. I just realized looking at it, there's not an apostrophe. Yeah. Thank you, Apple. Two meaningful hunks of this. Number one, it's. It's is a possessive. Who possesses? The USFG is the subject of the sentence. What is the verb?
Should.
Increase is the verb.
Grammar lesson.
What is the object of the sentence?
The ocean.
It's non-military, blah, blah, exploration, and/or, etc., right? It's is that possessive, which means that it's refers back to the subject of the sentence, which is the United States federal government. That is very meaningful. There will be some really significant debates over how encompassing and how strict the word it's ought to be. Right? It's is meaningful in that sense because it's the USFG, in theory, that has to do the exploration or the development. Better question then, who is that not? No, we're still on it's. Huh? Maybe the private sector. I'm going to suggest that the private sector can do some of it later. But you could certainly make that argument, and people will a lot. pretty much in like every round if you run any development app for the most part. Who else can't do it?
China.
States, individual states, China, Russia, any other country probably. A lot of affirmatives on this affirmatives on this topic will try and get away with doing cooperative ventures. We're writing one with our lab right now that does a cooperative venture with Cuba. All right?
That's a
Right? Why are we writing that? It might be on top of it. Right. Focus. We're doing it because a lot of other people are going to try, we think, and we need to get those debates in and have some practice on those issues here in the name of preparing you. Now, non-military. Non-military. This one seems pretty simple, right?
No.
No.
Not at all. No. No.
No, why not?
I guess there could be really good arguments made that as long as you have a hegemony advantage, then you're being pretty militaristic.
Yeah,
Or like
okay,
the
that might be fine, and that's interesting for the question of whether or not you're being militaristic. But I mean just like the meaning of the words non-military. What does that mean? Not the military?
Having no characteristics.
What if the military, what if people in the military do things that aren't military things, though? What if they do things that civilians would normally do? What if the military goes out into the middle of the ocean and makes cupcakes?
You're out of breath, that's why.
All right, hands.
It would still be a military service because it's while they are on duty.
What's that distinction then? But they're still not doing military stuff. Yeah, what if
But
yeah.
it's still would be.
What if you had the military do like totally anti-military stuff?
Well, that'd be a pretty great.
What if you had the military like make a drum circle? You know? Huh? Well, it's still the military is your claim, right? How so? But you're using them as so what? I mean, so big deal. Everyone in here who identifies, as male is going to have to register for selective service. We're all already members of the military in the United States. Can we do non-military things?
So every app is
Right? I mean, I don't know. Hey, wait though. You know what would be cool? If I had some cards on this. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes.
Good, I have one.
Wait,
Oh, mind blown.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, like, a general interpretation via the app is that the USFG is all three branches, right?
Typically, yes.
Shut up, Brian.
Alright, come on, let's listen. He's got a question, let's
As
answer.
long as the president is like commander-in-chief of the military, can't the argument be made that as long as the USFG acts, including the executive branch, then you're always being militaristic, because he's the commander-in-chief of the military.
You can make that argument a lot. Yes.
Yeah!
Yeah, you're not going to listen.
You're gonna lose.
Yeah, it's, the app has those things called solvency cards. And that's where you're going to run into trouble. So, here we go. I've even made colors here. The term non-military is used here to refer to roles which are not located within Army or militia structures. Since roles within military structures involve both combat and non-combat roles, and here's a great example, right? Army cooks, right? Everybody cooks. There's nothing inherently military-ish, right, about cooking, right? Porters, signalers, engineers, the military has all of those things, right? Yet those people, we all do those things. Well, do any of you know semaphore? That would be cool. I'd make you like send signals with flags right now if you did. But
Slap the sign.
anyway, right? They do non-military stuff. So what this piece of evidence suggests is that non-military doesn't just mean not doing blow things up stuff, all right? But rather it means it can be military units that do it. Because what you're actually describing when you say the military is doing don't blow things up stuff is you are describing non-combat, not non-military. Which is to say this piece of evidence evinces the claim made earlier by, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Me?
Yes? Monica? Nice to meet you, Monica. By Monica, that if it's the military doing it, it's the military. Which is kind of the sort of like easy litmus test. Why does this matter? You ask, right? You're like, obvious. Come on, Josh, why are you wasting our time with this? The reason, all right, is because one of the most popular affirmatives on the entire topic is going to be icebreakers. You may remember this from a couple years ago on the transportation infrastructure topic, when it was also not topical. But, why is the icebreakers app, why is that relevant to this? Yes? It's the U.S. Coast Guard, and the U.S. Coast Guard is, interestingly enough, one of the how many branches of the United States military?
17,000.
No. 6, right? It's one of the branches of the military. Now, let's complicate that a little bit then. What else does the Coast Guard do?
We already complicated it.
Thank you so much. What else does the Coast Guard do? Yeah.
Something to do with integration as well as counter-narcotics.
They do all of that and so much more too, right? They handle all of the search and rescue, all right, in all of the EEZ of the United States. They also, interestingly enough, are responsible for the regulation and management and enforcement of almost all exploration and development activities that happen. That's annoying, because that means that part of every, if this interpretation is correct, which I think is pretty good in terms of limiting the topic, otherwise you can just have the military do anything, and then that way you can get out of a bunch of counter plans and stuff like that, because the military is exempt from so many regulations and different things and stuff like that. At that point then, but every part of a plan then probably necessarily involves some enforcement mechanism that is anti-topical in theory.
Unless you're not topical.
Pardon?
Unless you're not topical.
Are they like different?
That's what he literally just said.
I think it's
Good question.
topical, being not topical.
Also part of the military. But, interestingly enough, not always, are they? All right, expect everyone, hey, focus. Ask your question again louder so everyone can hear it.
What about Merchant Marine?
The Merchant Marine. What's the Merchant Marine? So who constitutes part of the Merchant Marine? It's in the name.
The Marines.
Wrong.
Merchants.
Merchants, right. Those are civilian ships. All right? Theoretically speaking, the United States is capable of constituting a merchant marine. All right, how many of you have ever heard of the Arsenal of Democracy, or the Lend-Lease program? No one here is like, come on, seriously? Get out. Have you not, Lend-Lease? What was Lend-Lease? We gave a bunch of tanks and military equipment and stuff to the Allied powers in World War II before we got involved in the war after Pearl Harbor. How did we do it? We sent it over on ships. Where did we get those ships?
Military.
They were not military ships. They were civilian ships that were commandeered into the Merchant Marine. Is this actually a question about that, or is this just
It's
more
actually
like
about
the
this. It's actually about this.
Okay, good.
It says it was originally titled an act to further promote the defense of the United States. Isn't that kind of militaristic?
Okay, that was another link question. All right, I'm not going to answer questions about is that militaristic anymore. The answer to you is obviously yes. Yeah.
What about research done by the military or?
Research, that's what this says, right? That would be non-combat, not non-military.
Developed by the military but implemented by other people.
Interesting enough. We'll get there when I get to the exploration question. Speaking of which, segue. All right. The two words that actually matter more than anything else in the resolution in terms of figuring out what you're doing is exploration, which is the first one that we're going to deal with. Seriously, stop talking. Exploration. What on earth does exploration mean? This is actually the most precisely defined word I've ever seen in a debate topic. It's really quite simple, and there's a beautiful, precise, very good definition that's part of the federal government. There was a presidential panel that was formed last decade. It was initially commissioned by President Clinton. It reported its findings during President Bush's term, and it gave the following definition of exactly what ocean exploration in the United States federal government. It is discovery through disciplined, diverse observations and reportings of findings. It includes rigorous systematic observations and documentation of biological, chemical, physical, geological, and archaeological aspects of the ocean in the 3 dimensions of space and time. See, couldn't be more simple. That was a joke. All right, thank you. What isn't that then? Yes, simple is one. But what isn't it?
Broad.
Well, it's not like enacting anything specific, it's just observing from the outside, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Discovery. All right, that's the first thing it is. All right, is discovery. That's an important part of the definition to remember. All right, it's the discovery of something. What do we do? What is it that we're discovering?
Biological, chemical, physical, geological.
Biological, chemical, physical, geological, and archaeological aspects of the ocean. Biological, what does that mean?
Living.
Dealing with living things. Right? Chemical,
Chemical.
we can go past that one, I think. Physical, I think we can handle that. Geological, right? The terrain underneath, the various formations, the shape of the oceans, all of those things. And archaeological. Rich,
Is that like how they thought Atlantis might, they found an underground city near Cuba, and they thought
maybe, yeah, it's shipwrecks, for instance, and things like
How
that,
about more
right?
like Herculaneum is now under the sea, it's off the coast of Italy.
Yep,
And it doesn't have to be Atlantis.
yep, right, yes,
So, could this apply to like a Flight 370?
we're gonna get there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a lot of people are right with Flight 370 app. I don't think it's T.
Right?
All right, hold
That
on.
face right there.
Relax, hey, focus, all right? Because here's why not, right? Disciplined, diverse observations and reportings of findings, including rigorous systematic observations. But most importantly, again, is the word discovery. I will get to this distinction a little bit later on when we talk about development and some other things. All right? But here are things, you're going to hear this definition almost every debate. All right? This definition is too spot on, it's too precise, it's too on everything else. I want you need to pay attention to. So here are the things that matter. The first, all right, is the fact that it's the President's Panel on Ocean Exploration. All right? That means it's a reasonably authoritative source. It also has the intent to define. Second thing that's meaningful for this, right, is this phrase. It is discovery through disciplined, diverse observations and recordings of findings. And this is going to be a very, very important distinction on some instances. Some teams are going to try and go for a T argument about the difference between exploration and research. That those are different things. They're different things. Now, here's the nice part, though. Is even if you're not topical under exploration, yeah, you're probably topical under development. All right. And here's why. Because we've got this word development, and this is where things get tough. Because try as I might, I could not find a definition of development, nor has anyone else that I've spoken to, all right, that has anywhere near the precision that ocean exploration does. No.
I have one. It's the act or process of creating something over a period of time.
Certainly, but it's not a definition of ocean development specific to the United States government, the way they define it. If that makes sense. Like in the way that the ocean exploration one, they're like, hey, when the government talks about these things, when they're making ocean policy, when they use these words, this is what they mean and they don't mean other things. They don't do that for development. Right? They haven't done it at all. In fact, they have multiple different definitions in different places, even with the exclusive intent to define for those. So, for instance, here's a generic. I went around and I looked at some other camps. I talked to some friends. I'm like, what are y'all talking about with tea and stuff like that? So here's one that everybody's been using in a lot of different places that I looked. The broad objectives of ocean development have been laid down by Parliament in the Ocean Policy Statement of November 1982. All right, that's pretty cool. What's the first thing that springs out to you when you hear this definition? Yeah, what's that?
What is the Parliament and the Ocean Policy Statements?
Yeah, do we have a Parliament in the U.S.?
Well, like, is that like an international?
Yeah, no, this definition's about India. All right. Right, it's about India. The domain of our concern, but it's still a definition, we can still use it, right? The domain of our concern for development of oceanic resources and its environment extends from the coastal lands and inlands lapped by brackish water to the wide Indian Ocean. The ocean regime is to be developed in order to, here we go, here's what development is. Explore and right? Oh, good. So development, exploration's part of development according to this definition. Good. Glad we put both words in. Nice work. Right? To assess living and non-living resources, harness and manage resources. And those could be materials, energy, and biomass. And create additional resources such as mariculture, which in the United States is called aquaculture. That's fish farming. And or in some instances growing seaweed. Cope with and protect its environment. Oh man, really? Yeah, huh? Good. All right. Cope with and protect its environment, weather, waves, and coastal front. So, in theory, according to this definition, you could maybe develop the ocean by building seawalls, or better seawalls, for instance. Why would that be a good idea? Why might that be a decent affirmative?
Hurricane preparedness.
Huh?
Hurricane preparedness.
Hurricane preparedness is a pretty good one right there. Huh?
We all knew that.
Global warming. Anybody else? Can anybody else think of a reason when a wave caused some issues? Tsunamis. Tsunamis had killed a couple 100,000 people in Indonesia. They also happened to overwhelm and cause a massive nuclear meltdown in Japan. Likely potentially the largest the world's ever seen. That sounds like a cool laugh to this guy. All right? Stopping those sorts of things. This topic's getting big, and it's getting big fast with this definition. All right? 4, develop human resources, knowledge, skill, and expertise, because that's not limiting at all. And 5, play our rightful role in marine science and technology in the international arena. What's that sound like? Sounds like soft power or something like that, or science diplomacy and things like that. Those are going to be pretty common advantages too. And I figured it was more of the exploration definition that was going to lead to links to those sorts of things. Of course, the exploration definition is part of the development definition in a lot of these. So, awesome. So, let's try another one. I didn't like that one very much. All right. Let's try another. So let's go into a book that talks about the different discussions of ocean law and the phrasings that have been used. So regarding the term development, Nandan, Rosen, and Grandy state that the reference to development, right? Anytime you see a word in quotes somewhere, right? We call those scare quotes in academia. That means that you should be terrified of what's coming next. All right? It's the equivalent of putting the word so-called in front of that word, right? They're about to, it's finger quotes, basically, is what's happening here. So, the reference to finger quotes development relates to the development, huh? All right, that definition's good. What's development?
Related to development.
Yeah, relates to development. Development of what? Fishery resources. This is about fish.
It's very stupid stuff.
This includes increased exploitation of little-used stocks, as well as improvements in the management of heavily fished stocks for more effective exploitation. Environmental requirement, this is talking about international law. In Article 61 of not endangering a given stock by over-exploitation, this envisages a long-term strategy of maintaining the stock as a viable resource. This is very interesting, though. This has raised a new problem for us in terms of the phrase development. It's not really a phrase, it's a word, but it's okay. What problem has this created now?
Fish shares, stocks.
When I normally think of development, right, if I think of, oh, we're gonna develop the ocean, I think, oh, we're gonna go out and take things out of it.
Oh, but if you're adding fish, you're putting stuff in the ocean.
This definition suggests that it might be topical, that it might be a form of development to actually either manage or protect different resources within the oceans. It may well be topical to not take things out of the ocean. That would constitute development under this instance, right? We could develop a regulatory regime. We could develop things like marine protected areas, which prevent the exploitation of resources or fishing in them. We could develop prohibitions on whaling.
This definition isn't necessarily talking about like putting development of like restricting that. It's like talking about fish stocks and how companies can buy.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I got that. I got more if you want.
Okay.
I mean, they're not in here. I just picked this one because it actually sort of like uniquely sucks.
I like it because fishery is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, fisheries are certainly interesting. You know, who doesn't like finding Nemo? All right. There's a hand over here for a question.
Just everybody finding you
I
know.
kind of have one of those.
Well, come on.
So like, would this apply like to like something like such as like a sea turtle that's just hatching an animal because it's not endangering it, it is allowing for multiplying of it? No?
Like protecting the sea turtle.
Yeah.
In the instance of sea turtles,
Well,
I'm going to
yeah.
go with no because they
Well,
actually do it on
hatch
land.
sea.
So
But couldn't you say like just some animal as long as you're not endangering?
maybe protecting the fisheries might be. Now, this creates a certain type of problem within the resolution if this definition becomes the standard. That problem is called bidirectionality. And that makes life pretty hard. Because like, if you're the neg, you were kind of really probably counting on one thing, right? And that was that the AF, to some degree, if they were going to do development, was going to have to be maybe a little bit mean to the ocean. It was going to have to take. But it's not very hard to find a good, not even bad, but good piece of evidence that says development could involve the management or protection of it. Now, yes?
Would you also consider like adding stuff to the ocean? Like be considered that? Like,
Maybe, because here's the next thing. What's a type of development you may hear? You hear the phrase sustainable development used a lot, right? We need to have sustainable development, right? Which is development, but development that doesn't hurt the thing that it's developing and doesn't exploit things and stuff like that. I don't think the app is going to have a particularly hard time winning that sustainable development should be allowed to be a topical affirmative, especially in an age of debate where critique arguments are so prevalent and are extremely powerful. I think the app is not going to have to do a whole lot of work to be like, hey, we should be allowed to not be awful. Like, it's probably not, because like the neg's going to get up and be like, development means you have to destroy the ocean. Next off, why are you destroying the ocean? You know, I mean, like, negs do that all the time, right? And the app's going to say, yeah, that's probably not super fair for us. I don't think the app's going to have a hard time with that. Here's another problem, actually, and this one has been concerning me for most of the day, considering that our lab is writing a bunch of apps about, right, what's like the big resource other than fish that we get out of the ocean anymore?
Oil!
Oil, right. Where are my Houston people at?
Woohoo!
All right.
Is that a phone for you all?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Houston, please tell me I'm very tired.
Here's the law. Literally, this is what is on the books in the United States Code in the section about oil drilling in the ocean. First, the term exploration means the process of searching for minerals, including blah, 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 blah. Nice. Nice. It's part of our topic. It defines it. Part 2. The term development means those activities which take place following discovering minerals in paying quantities, including physical activity, drilling, platform, good for Sweet. Sweet sounds just like the app we're writing. Sounds perfect. The term production means those activities which take place after the successful completion of any means for the removal of the minerals, including such removal fuel. So, let me get this straight. The part where after you've built the drilling platform and after you've found the oil and all that, that you then begin taking the oil and doing things with it, you know, the ones you get the advantages off of, is not exploration or development, but is instead production. may be a problem. Or the part after you build the OTEC plant and then start taking the thermal energy out of the ocean, production. Or those offshore wind farms, production of electricity. Building the wind farm, development. Using wind farm, production.
Every energy app
Probably makes every single energy app pretty much not topical. So, okay, I've got answers. But, yeah. Yeah, huh? This up to minerals offshore. Alright, but boy, that's a pretty precise and good definition. Not bad, huh? You know what the best part about it is? It's like written into the law. Like, when they wrote the bill, to like, be like, what are the rules for doing stuff on the Outer Continental Shelf? They're like, well, whatever they are, when we talk about them, we want these 3 words to mean these things. Yeah. On the other hand, though, let me ask you a question. I said, like, other than fish, what do we do in the ocean mostly? Oil. It seems like a bad topic. If we have a topic and we're just like, we're going to pretend like the biggest contemporary debate that happens right now in American politics. How many of you remember what John McCain said in the 2008 presidential campaign? Say it out loud. Drill, baby, drill. Yeah, exactly. How'd that work out? It's a huge debate. It is the single biggest debate we have about the oceans in the United States. It is the crux of the ocean debate. I'm not sure T interpretation that says, just like, you know, like, okay, I'm not going to look at that 7/8 of the room, is necessarily a great interpretation. Even if it helps the neg, because then they don't have to debate those pesky oil affirmatives, or those energy affirmatives. You know, they don't have to do any of those oil updates or anything. Relax, we'll obviously put this card out and sweat it. Nope, burying this one deep, 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 deep somewhere where no one can find it. No. Possibly at the bottom of the ocean. All right. So, take a 5-minute break. I'm done with the words and the topic for now. Hold on. Listen up. It is exactly 7:59 on my clock. When I say take a 5-minute break, I'm going to start talking again at 8:04.
Yeah, what? One second, Michelle, 1 second. Because it's not a mineral?
Wait, Brian! Why are you asking me? My question? Stealing the question?
Did you pause the camera? Yep. Yep, just leaving it running. The internet's gonna know that we have this conversation. Yep. mad that I have not figured out the 2048 secret.
Never swipe up.
I thought it was never swipe down.
I mean, it doesn't really matter because like just
So always just
pick
like
a direction. Like, if you're used to never swiping down, that's fine. I just focus, try and focus on the bottom left or bottom right corner. Green Gray Workshops presents 2048 Tips and Secrets.
Yeah. You have like the best score that I have seen so far. My little sister has beat the game, like murdered the game, and
What do you
I,
mean by beat the game?
like,
'Cause I'm convinced that it's impossible to get the biggest score without using some sort of practice mode that allows it to use, because it's so luck-based once you get to a certain point.
she sent me a photo on Instagram of her score. And I was like, wow. What's the highest that you've gotten?
Well, I've gotten an 8096 piece, but that was not using a practice mode. I downloaded an app with the practice mode, and I got 136,000 piece. That's just because you can undo anytime something bad happens.
Oh, so it gets you.
So it kind of gets
Oh,
boring.
she's only got a 4096 tile.
What, they use the same language?
And I was like, wow. But still, that's better than what I can do.
I was pretty excited about the first 4096 I got, and I sent it to Colin, he got really mad. He didn't believe me at first, so I kept sending him 4096 quotes, and then I finally got 81 and
And you're like,
Starting again. So, I talked about all these things, these different arguments that I think are going to be common and stuff like that. So, the military, non-military versus non-combat distinctions. I think the exploration, development, production T argument is going to be very common. I think the what is and isn't an ocean kind of thing is going to be common, and I think it's is going to be meaningful when you think about it in combination with the notion of territorial waters and exclusive economic zones, since you could easily define that the only development that is actually United States' development, i.e. possessed by the United States, is development which occurs within its exclusive economic zone. Otherwise, it's just kind of whatever. That's an argument you're going to hear. So, the question is, of course, so what is it that's actually doubtful? All right, what's going to happen? And the answer, truthfully, I think, with most of the definitions of development that exist, I think all of those interpretations, save the non-military one that I just described, are largely contrived. I think the affirmative will not have an excessive amount of difficulty of beating them, with the exceptions of a couple other things, because the problem is that if you're not exploration, you're probably development. And if you're not development, you're probably exploration, and if you are exploration, you're probably development anyway. Vice versa and stuff like that. Especially with this weird situation where one can be so precisely defined, and every other part of the literature that uses the phrase ocean exploration points to that definition I showed you and is like, yeah, that's what that means. And development is the opposite. No one agrees. In fact, the United States government, depending on which part of the U.S. Code or Code of Federal Regulations you're in, changes its definition of development. For instance, the one I showed you is from the part that governs oil on offshore areas. But if you go to other parts of the law, it defines it differently. When the government does those definitions, it's only for that section of the code. So, here's my advice to you in terms of how you ought to prepare for this topic. And I've attempted to make this broad as possible to kind of try and appeal to sort of everyone in this sense. So this isn't just like a You know, this isn't just like which death stats do you need. I think that this is hopefully useful for people that are interested in going for critiques as well. First thing, divide the topic in two. Broadly, you need to prepare for two types of affirmatives. One is you should have just a good, generic negative to exploration. Maybe it's a word pick. All right, the word exploration is bad or something, although I think development is the easier one to pick out of, obviously, but still, have a strategy for this is our exploration neg if we've got nothing more specific. Number two, have a development neg. And I'll have some suggestions for what some of those could be. Broadly speaking, two large generic strategies that you always have to fall back on. That is the absolute minimum that you need to have before you go to the first tournament. Because you will have a very hard time predicting what the AFs on this topic will be. Think about those definitions, right? There's all of these different, there's biological aspects of it, there's chemical aspects of it, there's minerals, there's geography. You can map the ocean floor, you cannot map the ocean floor. You can map the ocean floor and do it in a different language. You can map the ocean floor but turn it upside down so south is north and north is south now. All right, and guess what? Solvency card for that one, okay? Not hard to find either. All right, divide it in two, have one for explore, one for develop. Let's deal with development first. Ask yourself some questions when you are preparing negative things for this. Question number one. What are they developing? This is where having a couple of decent critique arguments will be pretty handy. Speaking of hands, Krishna, keep them to yourself. All right.
He just added
So, what are they developing? Not, interestingly enough, what is development? So the better question is, are they developing something? Or is what they are doing development? When you hear an ask, somebody reads a new ask, you go home to research it, or if you're looking for asks, ask yourself, do I want to develop a thing? Or do I want to be doing development? I would probably have some sort of K argument just in case, like a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing, against doing the development, being involved in that process of development. This could be another one of those dirty word picks, maybe, where you're just like, don't say development, it's a bad word. You don't want to do that. It could be one of the, it could just be a very just very sort of normal standing reserve, kind of higher case sort of thing like that. Hopefully you can develop something that's a little bit less generic and won't allow people just to dip into their back files to answer it. But better that than nothing else. If it's a thing, right, that they are developing with the affirmative, then the thing's the thing. Which you'll catch the conscience of the king. Nobody read Hamlet. Okay, good.
Oh my god.
Right, all right. Right, the thing is what you're going to probably focus on then in terms of strategizing for the negative. For instance, affirmatives that are developing oil production. Well, you're going to have to deal with this oil question. And those are kind of where you can start in terms of negatives, in terms of trying to strategize how you want to research and work through and think about the sort of broad sort of strategies. In terms of things, I've developed a highly convenient three-pronged system of strategizing for things that could be developed in order for breaking it down. They are animal, mineral, and vegetable. Anytime you're not sure, think of 20 questions, and you'll always remember this. Animal, probably fish. All right? You probably need a fisheries neg. In the fisheries neg, you need some cards about fish stocks, some generic impact defense to overfishing, and defense to sort of species arguments, preferably that talk about like apex predators or important like upper food chain level animals, and how like if we're just a few great white sharks light, it's not going to be the end of the world. All right, just some good defense against that would be useful. Mineral. This is actually a term of art in this instance. That's what oil is. It's considered a mineral under U.S. law. You just need an oil neg on this topic. You need a natural gas neg too. End of story. You also need a renewable energy negative. Like you gotta have some case cards on that. It doesn't matter what else you go for. You gotta beat the case. Otherwise, your neg you just lose if the app loses their whole app.
What renewable apps do you say?
Wind, OTEC.
Would you consider like that floating SMR?
That floating SMR app. No, but the reason the SMR app was good,
Yeah.
all right, back on the college topic, was because it was the military that was doing it.
Oh,
All right, so that took away a bunch of the counterplans and stuff like that. Otherwise, the SMR app is not nearly as good because all the process counterplans and things like that come into play. And most importantly, the international actor counterplans come into play. Because I'll give you a hint, nobody in the United States builds SMRs right now. Well, no one builds SMRs anywhere, but the Japanese are ahead. Yeah.
If they did, wait, phytoplankton, would it be under like?
Oh, hey, we're talking about vegetables. Plants, right? Vegetables, right? You gotta have some decent defense against phytoplankton. One of the very basic building blocks of life on Earth itself. Right? You just gotta, because everybody's gonna be like, oh, every app's gonna be like, and that will destroy global phytoplankton levels. Or guarantee somebody's gonna write the app to iron seed the ocean, to create more phytoplankton and algae, to pull CO2, to make a carbon sink, because we're reaching the tipping point of warming already, and China and India are going to emit a bunch of stuff, and there's nothing we can do about it, so we've got to suck the CO2 out instead of reduce, so we'll avoid all the econ impacts. You need a neg to that too. I haven't seen it yet, but it's coming. Accept that as gospel, yes.
Would you consider aquaculture as part of vegetable?
Depends on what you're aquaculturing, animals or vegetables.
Oh, so if it were like algae.
Yeah. All right, so there's that. Questions about that? I thought that scheme was kind of clever, personally. I don't know. All right. Second one we need to get to, and I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to be cutting this shorter, is exploration. I don't have a good answer here yet. Because this word is sort of interesting. Now, somebody asked about the Flight 390 app earlier. 370, yeah, well, mine's 20 more than yours. 370, right? Malaysian Airlines 370, it was a Boeing 777-300ER, disappeared about an hour after takeoff. You might have heard about it if you have CNN, anything that you've heard, everything you ever need to know about it. Still missing. Several apps that have been written at other institutes have searched for Flight 370. It's sort of kind of clever. Unfortunately, I think it falls prey to ignoring a crucial distinction. Huh? No, because they could you can send the US, because it's like the sonar buoys they're using to search do belong to the US. The Navy's just giving them a sonar. Huh? Difference between exploration and research. Exploration is discovery. Slow down. Just keep it down for a minute. All right. Exploration, as that definition indicated, is discovery. And there are some very good pieces of evidence, which will be included in your topicality file shortly. Give us 2 days and we'll have it done. That exploration cannot have a particular end in mind. Exploration is not, we are looking for this one thing. Exploration just has to be, we're going to go see what's out there. So, to nerd it out full blown, then exploration is Star Trek. All right? They're not locked in so they're not attempting to beat the dark side or overcome the Empire, right? Exploration is just, we're just going to be out there. All right? Research, on the other hand, has an end in mind. Sort of. Research is distinct, and the report that really good card comes from, the organization that produced it, makes this distinction in their final report, the difference between exploration and research. This is how you're going to bust some people. If I were you, all right, here, turn off the camera for this one so we're not sharing. I'm kidding.
Oh.
I might cut that card, which of course, once again, we will, and I might read a different definition in the 1NC. I would not read the card I put up there, the one from the Presidential Commission. Knowing that the affirmative thinks they meet that definition, the affirmative, given how widespread and accepted, it will very rapidly become as the definitive definition, the definitive source on what exploration means. I think affirmatives will likely read it in the 2AC if the negative has not read it in the 1NC. Thinking, haha, they didn't read the Presidential Commission card, we will read it now and win. You can then, right, the trap will have sprung at that point in the negative block when you turn around and you say, au contraire, here's another card from your source, which in the 2AC you have claimed we should accept as authoritative. We will concede that that is true. Here's a card that says you are research. You are not exploration.
That's
You
dirty.
do not meet your counter-interpretation, ergo, you lose debate. They're in trouble. When you don't meet your own interp, you lose the debate on team. Okay, that's how that goes. All right, only in a very few situations involving gross incompetence on the part of the negative have I seen the affirmative win that debate. Here's the kicker. Is that a question or just a question? Hold on, we'll deal with it all.
So you're saying run T on exploration, but then don't read that particular piece of the evidence.
And see if they come back over the top with it in the 2AC. In which case then you re-raise with your research, your non-exploration. I'm not saying this is like how you should win every debate on the neg. Like this will be good for like I'll win once, but it's always nice to have one in your pocket. This difference then, research itself can be broken down into two different things, and I'm going to be very sort of quick on this distinction. I hope to talk about it a little more because this is my idea for a really sweet path, all right? And really sweet for everyone too, including our K friends, all right? And that's the difference between basic science versus applied science. Okay, the easiest way I can think of to explain this difference is that basic science, basic research are like, that's like your Galileos and your Newtons and people like that, all the famous ones. We're basically researching things for the sake of getting to know them. Much like our exploration description, right? Why are we doing it? Because it's good to know things. And because the value of basic research is that, well, its value is unknown. We discover it over time. All the really cool inventions and really major leap forward, it will be argued, all right, come unpredictably. It's what is described in one book as the black swan effect.
Link.
We never discover and we never invent the really awesome inventions that move humankind forward in magical ways are always accidents. They're black swans. Right? They happen as a result of basic research. Basic research is almost entirely conducted nowadays in universities. And it's even barely conducted in universities. Applied research, on the other hand, is what corporations do. All right, applied science is we're looking for this one thing. I think a really good example of the distinction between the two, right, is applied science is like a pharmaceutical company that's attempting to research a new drug. Why are they doing it? Because it has a particular application. There's some really awesome literature, all right, that has some really cool case stuff and everything too. I've been like dying to turn this into an argument somewhere. I really tried to like make it work on the immigration topic in college, but I just like couldn't get there in time. That like invention and technological progress and things like that in the United States have slowed down worldwide, globally, particularly in medical sciences, have slowed to a crawl. The rate of new drug discovery in the United States is essentially zero right now. All right, the only new pharmaceutical products and medical inventions that are coming out are what we call Me Too's. All right, so Pfizer invents Viagra. All right, what's the next thing you see on TV? Ads for Cialis and Levitra and everyone else's drug like that. All right, those are Me Too inventions. The reason this literature says is because we've stopped doing basic science and instead now only do applied science. I think there's a way to write an affirmative that says we need to do ocean exploration. We need to build like our, Starship Enterprise, basically, and just go out and explore the ocean. And we need to do it because basic science is good. Now, hey, friends, I sense that's most of you over there. Right? What does this kind of sound like? Like, what is the basic versus applied science? Like, what are some things that pop into your head when you hear this? Huh? Yeah, certainly this neoliberalism idea, for sure, right? Applied science is super neoliberal. And what does the United States government fund for the most part now? In terms of science, almost all applied science. All right, they don't really fund basic science as much anymore. I think there's some, I'm going to stop there, again, because I'm losing my voice. I think this is a really cool kind of place you can get, and where you can protect yourself from what I think is the most sort of biggest problem. And I'll cover, this is the last thing I'm going to cover, how to go neg. Inelegant segue, but it's okay. How do you go neg? All right, I think you need a few, everybody needs to have a few of these things in their box. And these are in order of priority. What I, for one thing, are going to be the really big debates, and you can win the most by being good with these. First thing, gotta have a good T file. I think you can win a ton of debates on T. For instance, the exploration versus research violation is a great one, right? It really limits down the number of affirmatives. On the other hand, topicality is going to be a sort of nasty debate too, because the and/or. They'll say, okay, fine, we're not exploration, but we're development. So you're pretty much going to have to read both exploration and development T every round, if you're going for T. You'll need to bracket them out of both of those. I would honestly probably start the debate in the 1NC. I wouldn't wait till the neg block to do it. Because a good AF, if they're like, if the 2N gets up to cross-ex the 1AC and they're like, are you exploration or development? If you're the AF, what is your answer? Pardon? Yes, clearly we're both. Don't be ridiculous. Why would you ever answer one? Don't. All right, T. You got to get good on T. And T's great. You know why?
You can't lose on it.
Yeah, you can't lose on it. Yeah, they can't impact term. I guess they can make an RBI, but the last refuge of scoundrels. Yeah. By the way, those are banned at this camp. I don't know if you do that or not, but those are just. We have one rule here. Huh? Okay, that's number 4 then. No RBIs. All right, no RBIs. All right, T. Get good at T. Work hard on T. You can make some hay on that. Number 2. I think you should have some international act or counter plans if you can. There's that word "it's" in the resolution. And all you've got to do is kind of beat one word in the resolution, or one of those operative phrases that I've described, and you'll be in good shape. You'll win the debate in most of those cases. So you can beat its/USFG, because most of these things aren't necessarily things that have to be done by the United States government. having a couple of good international actor CPs will just come in super duper handy in most situations. All right, and oftentimes, you'll know right away when they read the 1AC whether or not that's going to be any use to you. You know, like right off the bat, they'll just be like, yeah, Japan can do that. And then the debate's probably over. Now they've got to win offense to every dissent and benefit. I'm not going to belabor that. Number 3, you need to have some critiques. I don't think there's any way to get by without them on this topic. I think there's too many affirmatives, too many of them too small. And so you're going to need somebody that gives you a huge link amplification effect. That would be the links to a K, and the alternative, since it obviates the sort of problem of link magnitude in that regard then. That being said, I think you need to be a little bit more original and to think a little bit better, because I think that there are a lot of critiques that everyone has ever, you know, that have just like run forever and ever, and I've seen like other camps put these out, right? They're like, oh, we did our Heidegger K, and look at all these cards from Timothy Luke, who's actually writing about Foucault, not Heidegger. You know, and stuff like that. Don't just back file check on these ones. Try and do something more interesting. Try and do something more original, because you've actually got a chance to do that on this topic. Every other topic we've had before, excepting the space topic, has happened for the most part on land. I realize you're like, boy, what other amazing things will you tell us shortly? I feel like I paid for this. You know? But you need to find some original ways to kind of think of things. Here are some ideas that popped into my head that I think might be useful. That if I were doing high school debate and coaching high school debate extensively, that I would look into. The first is the fact that more than a lot of other topics in the past, this one is going to make the app a little bit better against the K in some situations, because it gives the affirmative the opportunity to break down things like sovereignty a little bit more. Because they're going to be going out, right? The ocean is, you could suggest, is what is called a liminal space. And what is it to be, does anyone know what that word means? To be liminal is to be in a state of change, or in a place of change, on a boundary or a border. Borderlands, borders are typically referred to very much as liminal spaces, right? It's where, like, you're not quite one, you're not quite the other, you're in between. Well, that's what oceans are. They don't, you know, out past that 12-mile mark, they don't quite belong to anyone anymore. And smart affirmatives will come up with defenses of what they do as being ways in which they break down ideas like the sovereign nation state, ideas like security and things like that. They go into the ocean and they go into this open space that challenges the idea of land and all, you know, and all this sort of things. They'll do these things, and that will make a lot of the links to traditional K arguments, like a security argument and things like that, a little bit harder to win. At a minimum, it will make a good 2AR on the perm a little bit easier to give if the affirmative effectively deploys these. Which means that you've got to probably conceptualize things a little bit different in terms of the way that you want to approach the K if you want to insulate yourself from that spin of the 2AR. Now the good answer would be to write like a really good, you know, link wall. That would help. But I would also suggest kind of just taking a sort of mental snapshot and asking where that leads you in terms of the way that the topic works. For instance, what was the first way that I defined the oceans? A contiguous body of water, which is to say they're global. All right? They cover the entirety of the world. Which means that things like ocean exploration don't imagine the world necessarily as an assemblage of tiny spaces, right? Or well-demarcated places, so much as they can view the world as such. The world as world, the globe as globe. They can understand those sorts of things. I think there's a lot of different arguments that you can sort of develop. There's a very good one that's based on sort of global views being bad, for instance, right? it's a sort of Heideggerian argument. You can look up a book. There's a great book called The Age of the, what is it, Age of the Little Target by Ray Chow. That'll give you some good links. An Oklahoma team used to run that. Talk to Gabe about it. He knows a lot about it. Kind of like that. A second one that I think would be interesting, and somebody's going to win a ton of debates on this sooner or later. It's going to be the new hotness soon, I guarantee it. It's almost impenetrable, and there's not much literature yet, but it's by a German guy by the name of Sloterdijk. I knew you were going to do this. S-L-O-T-E-R, D-J-I-K, I think, isn't it? Is it D-I-J-K? Yeah. He's sort of like the mega hotness in philosophy right now amongst people that are into philosophy, and into like, very lefty European philosophy as opposed to like Western, like Anglophile analytic philosophy, an Anglophone. His entire corpus is this book. It's a series of 3 books, and it's called, in German, it's called Sparen. Anybody speak German? Spheres. So, the meaningful aspect, I think, that you can get some really good K arguments developed off of on this topic is the notion of space. In fact, here's all the links you need. No. For Sloterdijk, more. All right. The short version of Sloterdijk's work is that one of the sort of magnum opuses of 20th century philosophy is Martin Heidegger's Being in Time. Right there. Sloterdijk, you can almost imagine the Sparen trilogy as being and space. He says the sort of contemporary conjuncture is one that doesn't lend itself well to investigation along temporal lines, but instead needs to focus on spatiality. He says the sort of image of the sphere is the best way to do it. He has 3 books. 1 is called Spheres, 2 is called Bubbles, and 3 is called Foam. And they're all representative of, up to him, the sort of 3 different ways that we interface, the 3 potential sort of modes of interaction of humans, right? Foam being like big assemblages of humans all mushed together, whereas spheres are the individuals being sort of globally focused. That's the most just guttural and insufficient explanation ever. Somebody could really make it work, I think, on this topic, particularly because this definition is going to come up all over. And the one thing we have to do to be exploration, I'll get you in a sec, Krishna, right, is we need to explore in the 3 dimensions of space and in time. And it refers to the 4th dimension of time in other parts of the reports and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I think this topic is actually really good for K debaters because of the ways that it sort of allows you to get into some spots where you otherwise might not have been able to get as easily on other topics and stuff like that. And so you can sort of not have to worry about running into a bunch of backfile answers and things. Krishna had a question.
It's kind of a stupid one. Could I run like a calculator on anything? Could I run like a calculator on anything related to energy or like ocean exploration?
Yes. Yeah. Short version. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Doubt, like,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Even
a cat case.
Couple questions. 1, in terms of the international CP, which counterpoint do you think, like which country actually produces that?
depends what it is. We'll work that out. We're researching it now. What's your name?
Cameron Castle.
Cameron.
I'm wondering if you put the if you put like a private center plan on the same level as international CP. It's like honestly, do you think he's actually doing things as well as private center?
Yeah, right. Because the United States doesn't do any development itself, right? It sells leases for development of things. I think smart apps, though, will essentially basically be apps that allow privates to do things, if that makes sense. So like actually sell the leases for offshore oil drilling or something like that. I think the private CP is potentially, I'd have an international actor in most instances, and against things that are like US drills and so on, CS or something like that. You got plenty of other good stuff to say. You should have one in the 1 and C anyway, because you should. But like, you probably won't for it. I'll get to you, Brian. I just want to make sure no one else has any other questions or anything that they needed to ask first. I want to do everybody one at a time. It's fine. Brian?
Alright, instead of talking about basic science versus applied science, like,
Right, yeah.
your app just to like just explore the ocean without having any meaning, how can you guarantee solvency of those findings without like finding a new sea?
Because what you're finding is the interest in looking.
So you're interested in looking at
You
your,
fiat insolvency already.
oh,
Yeah, you're not actually solving it. Right? No, that's the whole point, right? Is that you're not looking for a thing. You're just going out and looking.
but then you talk about like pharmaceuticals.
Right, which is great because it's like, that also like, that it's like you're so cape-proof against a lot of things in that instance too. You can like read it as advantages, like the whole Heidegger exploitation environmental thing, Kay, and stuff like that, you're awesome against that. Yeah, because like you flip the link completely back on itself, since you can just be like, no, the point is not that we're looking for it. The point is that we open ourselves up to be seeable, right? Now, whether or not that creates constitutes like a global vision that like later different things would be with, but I mean, I think it's sneaky good. If I was going into a debate against a team that I knew was going to go for K stuff on the neg, I would definitely probably just read an app that would just be like, oh, let's just go out there and look around. See what's up. You know? Yeah.
So what advantage would you find, like globalization?
Yeah, looking at things are good. Basic science is good. You know, causes a reconfiguration of sort of things like that. Also breaks the mold of applied sciences, particularly for ocean exploration. Yeah, kind of. It's got a plan, so you don't have to like lose the teams. Yeah, you can read black swans, basically, sort of thing like that. The whole point is that we don't know what it is that's going to be awesome, but we need to be out there attempting to figure out as many things as possible because that accident does happen statistically, but we just can't be looking for it if we don't find it. The good stuff's always an accident. Precisely. Yeah. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't have worn shoes until I was 60. Other questions? This was a little like unconventional. I didn't just list off apps and stuff like that, but kind of figured you all have computers and web browsers and stuff like that, so you can probably just go do them yourself. What? Shh. I'm not saying this is like everything you need to be negative, but just like, those were just some tips.
Did you say you had 4 things?
Sorry?
Did you say, is there a 4th item after K?
Oh, it's no, but case snags, obviously.
Oh,
You know, those are the 3 sort of things I would have to generically be prepared with, in addition to the things that people normally do. I feel like people have not been so great on the T, the international accuracy P lately. I mean, obviously a lot of people do K things, but I think teams that might not go for a K in some circumstances probably need to be able to on this topic. Hunter.
Do you think the DoD counterplan will be a winnable position?
Depends on what the app is, but yes. I think the DoD could do it on some things. The exploration apps, it's good against. I don't think it's as good against the development apps, obviously, since they don't share.
With fiat.
Huh?
But fiat.
But yeah, okay. But yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, to clarify. What exactly is the Peace Corps? Where does that fall under?
Peace Corps?
Yeah. Is that a,
No, it's
well, like, I mean, I know,
yeah, I don't know.
I
It's not military.
I know Kennedy didn't found it, but like, I was
Yeah, no, it's not military. It's got a military name, but
they,
yeah.
I don't think there's any definition that was.
Yeah, just like the Salvation
they
Army.
just like those for
All right. You got some more questions?
I guess mine was in terms of like gulfs and things along those lines. You know, they kind of are like right there, like Gulf of Mexico aft. Is that
Definitely
gonna be-
ocean.
And then what about like ports?
Port treasure.
Because I mean, when you get closer, that's when states kind of can start. That's when those states
Yeah,
have
that's,
things. Right in the first 3 miles or
But that's
whatever.
where
Some of them are national.
that's where the ocean and the land meet.
Some are roughly.
We had an app that was local. We didn't use
The question is whether or not, there's two questions here.
Right in the middle of the ocean.
Okay, here, coastal lands and islands lapped by brackish water,
Every countertime.
that's a port. For sure. The question is whether or not that is a development of the ocean or something else.
Because I was like ship tracking, that RFID stuff and all of that was not topical on transportation infrastructure, so you can make sure the terrorists don't get it. So I didn't know if doing things
Probably
like the
not.
shipping industry and so forth are going to be considered ocean
Yeah,
development.
because the, you know, I mean, one thing
Spies on
I think is worth noting. Right, there's a lot of words that aren't in this resolution. All right, and what's not in it is pretty relevant too. For instance, like the word resources isn't in it. Like they didn't write marine resources in, which literally for the first few months this topic was out, like my fiance and I, when we talked about it, we assumed was part of the resolution. But we couldn't fathom writing a resolution that didn't actually limit you having to do things to resources from the ocean. Note that you don't have to do that. Right? You just have to explore or develop the oceans. Hard stop. Right? That's a lot of latitude. This is why I was like kind of emphasizing like you need some good, big, broad, generic strats on